Hi, Ian Roberts and Mastering Composition. This is week 100 of my YouTube channel series, and in 4 weeks, it'll be 2 years exactly that I've done 104 YouTube videos. Of course, the gardener's just come out with his cutting tools next door, and I don't know if you can hear it or not, I hope not. But my local art center has just opened again, and there's figure drawing without instruction, which I love to do. And I thought this might be useful if your art centers are beginning to open up, if you like figure drawing. And even if you don't, I think you'll find the principles really interesting and engaging and useful in terms of your drawing practice. Now, figure drawing itself is a very special skill. I mean, there's an expression of, if you can't really draw unless you can draw the figure. Well, I think that's a crazy idea. I mean, you can't really draw the figure unless you can draw the figure. That's true. But there's all kinds of things you can draw without being able to draw the figure well. But it's a very specialized skill. And the problem is that, if you do something wrong with a figure, we know immediately. Whereas a tree, you can have any number of shapes. We're still going to read it as a tree. So I love figure drawing, as it happens, and I'm happy to get back to doing it again. And I thought I'd just show you a few of my drawings just before we start these 5 fundamental ideas of how to draw the figure better and really how to understand the way drawing works in terms of representing things. So this was a 2-minute pose. I think I put the tone in on the head and the behind her after the pose was done. That's probably 5 minutes, as I remember. Just thinking in terms of, what is the light doing? What are the shapes doing? Still shape making, just like I talk about in painting. The lines are very secondary there. There's obviously a more sustained drawing on a buff paper with pencil and white chalk. But I'm starting to get in, what is the figure doing in relationship to the environment? They're sort of very natural looking poses of the sorts of things that, you might actually see in real life, whereas that's more something that you would see, in a figure drawing session. But again, I'm very interested in the shapes and the lights and the darks in the composition. And that one, it almost looks like a sphere in sense of the lit side, the shadow, and the reflected light. In my 4th year at art college, I spent it in Florence, Italy. And I used to go to the drawing cabinets of the Uffizi for a half a day every week. And this is a copy by Annabelle Carracci. And you could just go in there and just get a portfolio of drawings, all the originals. And this one's by Titian. I mean, it's my copy of one by Titian, but the drawing was just sitting right in front of me. And I was copying pretty much exactly the cross-hatching, the quality of the edges, the quality of the line for that drawing. And then this is another one that's sort of similar. Just those numbers are just referring to different edge qualities and so on like that. And then while in the museums, I used to just draw the statues because they were so well lit and the forms were so terrific. Now, I know if you've done life drawing classes, sometimes the lighting's not that good, or, the pose doesn't interest you that much and you can't move because there's too many other people and so you don't feel that engaged by the pose. I mean, it's not always ideal. But often if you're walking around a figure drawing class, you'll see a figure drawn something like this. And the main fault with it really is the person is conceiving of the figure as a cutout, as an outline in space. A little bit like this cutout of Charlie Chaplin, which in fact is 2 dimensions. But the body is a 3-dimensional object sitting in space. And the 5 principles and ideas that I'm going to talk with you about today are how you start to improve figure drawing by getting a better sense of volume. And even if you don't draw figures, I think you'll find these 5 ideas really helpful in your drawing practice. So let's have a look. And then there's a bonus idea at the end of how to take these ideas and embed them into your painting practice. Principle 1, thinking of structure, getting the major proportions right. So the main thing about proportion is, let's say this is your piece of paper. Now, it makes sense to say, okay, if it's a standing figure, let's say, I'm going to put my figure there. I'm going to plan it, and that's how big I want it. And you can say, well, maybe it won't fit. Well, whether you've got a drawing this big or whether you've got a drawing 10 feet high, you can decide what's going to be here. That's your choice, right? So before you even begin thinking about it, think about where the midpoint is. Just sort of figure where that is. Maybe where this is for a standing figure. Obviously, if it's sitting in some other way, you'd have to be orchestrating it in a different way. But say the knees, maybe the shoulders. So you just kind of have a sense that you haven't started here and realized, oh God, I've run out of room. You've defined in advance. And this is the structure, just like composition in painting, that you do in advance to make sure it fits. You kind of think of it beforehand. Principle 2, think overlapping shapes rather than outline. We can see from this that the physiology is not just an outline, that this muscle overlaps that muscle. You can see that this overlaps that, and that overlaps that. This one overlaps that. And then when you see on the physiology, I mean, this guy's got good muscle form, but you know, you see the overlaps there to there to there to there to there. You know, I mean, you see there, there, there. They're all overlapping as forms in space. This is a Bargue drawing. Bargue created this with Jerome back in about 1868 to help at the École des Beaux-Arts for teaching drawing. But first off, just look at how well it's structured on the page in terms of the proportion to the page. But the thing I want you to look at, I'm going to zoom in here so you can see it, is look at the overlap here, 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 and here. And then look at it again here, here. That's not a mistake, into here. And then this comes out of that. And then say here, here, and that one coming into here, and the overlap there. Those overlapping shapes take it away from being a cutout into something that starts to look like 3 dimensions in space. Principle 3, think 3-dimensional forms, cylinders, spheres, forms in space. So rather than just thinking of an outline, imagine this is a figure and you're doing drawing class, or you're drawing this thing. Just think, say that kneecap that's closest to us. Just look at that thigh. It's a 3-dimensional form. It's not an outline of something. It's a 3-dimensional structure, and draw it like you sort of feel it as a structure. And the hip is here, and the other leg is going, so that when you, and then this calf comes down like that. So then when you're looking at the actual shapes, you've got the top of the kneecap here, the bottom of the kneecap here, and you can see them come in there. But then this muscle, you see, comes out of that and then joins another one that goes all the way back and comes into the hip here. You can see the whole form coming right around there. And then in here, on the other side of that kneecap, you sort of see this shape here. And then you see one form that's coming down like that, and then another one, still the thigh, sort of in like that. So you're getting this sense of like there's the belly and there's the chest and like maybe the arm there. And then you can sort of put the shape that you're seeing and that overlap there and that overlap there off these things that are considered as 3-dimensional structures in space. Principle 4, carving form with light. This is another Bargue drawing of a plaster cast clearly lit. And in some of these academic settings, you know, you draw the plaster cast for 2 years before you're even allowed to look at the figure. And the reason is you embed this idea of seeing in terms of lit and dark before actually approaching the much more complicated aspect of flesh and the colors and the changes and so on like that. So that when you come to draw the figure, you're still thinking in terms of lit side and dark side. Principle 5, engaging the figure with its environment. So let's say we create a sphere. Very simple, cast light. But look what happens when you consider what's going on behind it. Well, we don't know what's going on behind it because we're just making it up, but I'm putting this value in as dark as the line, the outline, so you can't really see it anymore. It'll just be blended in with the value there itself. But look at the difference that makes in terms of giving a sense of three-dimensionality and pop to the light. And you can see in this drawing, there's just a little bit of dark behind her head that just pops the light on the top of her hair. It's not trying to do very much. It's just doing that job to pop the light. I didn't address the idea of the quality of line in the drawings this week, but I think there was already enough in here. We can save that for another time. But I wanted to add one more idea, a bonus idea we'll call it. And that's that if you look at most figure drawings, it's just a figure on a sheet of paper. Sometimes it's sitting, sometimes it's standing. It looks something like this. And I wanted to talk to you for a moment about integrating the figure into the picture plane. So in other words, getting back to composition. So let's look at two drawings by Richard Diebenkorn. And he's clearly interested in the picture plane, in the figure, and in the environment, a natural environment, and the integration of those three. He's really designing in shapes. And I think this is a really useful idea to take from your figure drawing or your drawing practices and then moving that into the idea of your painting practice where it's in a more natural environment. So please do like the video if you enjoyed it and comment. Please do subscribe or click down below to get this in your inbox every Tuesday. I hope you have a fantastic week. I will see you on Tuesday. Bye for now.